Let's talk about necrosis and how that works. So necrosis is basically when your cells and tissues start to die and rot while still attached to your body. Now, there's multiple causes for this. It's very commonly due to infections caused by bacteria, which results in necrotizing fasciitis or flesh-eating bacteria. But it's also due to multiple other things, such as tissue trauma from things like burns or other extreme heat, as well as extreme cold, such as in the cases of frostbite. It can also happen due to burns from things like electricity or chemical agents, as well as things like radiation. Basically, anything that causes excessive tissue damage can possibly start to cause necrosis as well. But let's talk about how necrosis itself works and the process behind it. Part of the initiation of necrosis is osmosis, where some extracellular, so outside the cell, ions enter the cell through the membrane, and that messes with the concentration inside the cell, so in order to balance that out, water or other extracellular fluids follow into the cell, causing it to swell up. Now, before the cell itself actually swells, the organelles inside the cell start to swell first. Now, the main issue with this is that the organelles will swell and start to burst, and the main one that causes the necrosis is the lysosome. Now, the purpose of the lysosome is to contain all of the enzymes that the cell needs to break down things like lipids or proteins or anything. So it is just full of enzymes. Now, under normal circumstances, the lysosome releases these enzymes as needed where they go do their functions. However, the necrosis causes the lysosome to explode and release all of those enzymes all at once into the cell, which is not a good thing. Specifically, the enzyme that causes the most problems are hydrolases, which break chemical bonds using water. Now, all of these hydrolases are released into the cell, and they start causing issues. This causes the membranes of other organelles to rupture, as well as it breaks down proteins and your DNA and RNA, which you definitely need. Now, eventually, the cell is lysed or exploded, and all of the cellular components from the inside spill out into the surrounding tissue. Now, all of these cellular components, again, mainly those enzymes that break stuff down, they start to go kind of attack the surrounding cells and start the same process over and over again until there's a rather large section of tissue that is just made up of now dead exploded cells and their various cellular components that are now wreaking havoc on all of the surrounding tissue. Is kind of like a chain reaction. One cell exploded, and that infected some other cells, which then exploded, and keeps going on and on and on until you have this very large section of dead tissue. Now, typically, once the necrosis has started and gets to the point of being noticeable, there is no way to reverse it. You typically have to amputate the area or the limb or whatever. You can't really save it at this point because you can't bring this tissue back to life. Now, the cell lysis and damage does trigger these things called DAMPs, or damage-associated molecular patterns, to be released from the cell, and those are basically signaling molecules like, hey, there's some shit going on, we need an immune response here right now. So typically, when these DAMPs are released, it triggers the immune response, which, if the immune response beats out the necrosis, then that is okay. The immune cells kind of take care of everything. There will be cytokines or other signaling molecules released. There will be inflammation and quite a lot of pain around the area. Ideally, the necrosis will be taken care of by said immune system before it gets to the stage of your tissue actively rotting. At that point, it is irreversible and has to be surgically taken care of.